Hello everybody, how are all my favorite chess players doing today on this fine, amazing day? If you're new to my channel, my name is Sean Lei and I'm a National Master here in Canada. Today, I have a video, highly requested on this channel, about how to play positionally as a beginner. Luckily for you all, I remember my days as a beginner quite fondly, as it was not long ago that I was similar to you guys too. It wasn't until I began thinking positionally, instead of thinking about checkmates and tactics all the time, did I manage to skyrocket my rating from 800 to 2000 in less than 3 years. I went from this clown-looking fellow to this pretty Chad lad. Now, what positional skills did I learn? This is the first episode of my positional series, and this is video number 1, so make sure you keep watching these episodes for these useful techniques. Now, onto this position before you. Right before you now is a position created out of my own imagination, but it's a well-constructed position nonetheless. Despite this is a good first position to show, as it has a small amount of each of the big techniques we will be learning in subsequent videos later. So I want you now, before I speak and give you my opinion on this position, to bring out a notebook and just jot down any thoughts that come to you when you see this position. After I start speaking, then you can compare it to what you thought and see where our differences lie. Do you see, what do you jot down here? Do you see important squares? I don't know. Or is this an important square? Is that an important square? What do you see? Do you see exposed kings? Do anybody have exposed kings? Do you see weak pawns? Do you see dead people, but they don't see each other? Give yourself 5 to 10 minutes. You can pause your video and pretend I'm waiting for you. Now, while you're doing that, don't forget to hit that like button and tell me in the comments below what you're thinking about right now. So, alright, I'm going to assume you paused the video. If you didn't, it's your last chance. 3, 2, 1, and we're on to the position. So, when I first look at this position, I ask myself one very important question. Where do I have more space as white? Because I'm playing white over here, I'm only looking at what I can do in this position to attack. Now, a general rule of thumb, especially for beginners, the side where you have more space is generally the side where you want to attack. So how do you know where you have more space? More often than not, where you have more space is where your pawns are actually are. For example, in this position, this g-pawn is very, very far ahead of all the other pawns, and it controls very important squares. This c-pawn is also controlling very important squares over here. So our plan can actually consist of attacking both king side or queen side. Now, let me figure out what I can do. Set position. Easy. So it can attack either king side or queen side. But you want to think to yourself, now that you know that you can attack both sides, which side makes more sense and why? Now, how do we determine that? Now, after we think about space, a very important thing that we should think about is number 2, weaknesses. When I look at this position, I ask myself, what are the weaknesses in this position? Is it this super strong pawn chain, all these pawns that are working together? Probably not. It's definitely not. Is it perhaps these double pawns that have no idea what they're doing? Probably so. So, 2 out of the 3 techniques I'm going to be teaching you, or not really teaching, but telling you about today so far, is look at space and look at weaknesses. If they both lie on the same side, 99% of the time, that's where you want to attack. Remember, guys, having a plan, no matter how bad the plan is generally better than having no plan at all, especially if you want to improve. Sure, you might lose with a plan here and there, but at least you'll learn why, or how you lost, and so you can improve for the next game. That is extremely, extremely important. Now, as I said before, we want to attack here because of the space we have and the weaknesses that come over here that are over there. If we try to attack here with moves like b4, a4, sure, it's possible, but it's going to be hard with his pieces set up so solidly and so positionally sound. Now, somehow his pawn just teleported all the way up there, so we don't want that to happen. So, what is the best move here? Now, in order to do that, we also have to think of a third thing first, before we even go through space or weaknesses. Does my opponent have any threats here? Now, a threat doesn't have to be something that is targeted towards you. It doesn't have to be something like he's going to threaten your queen. For example, if our queen was here, oh no, he's threatening our queen. But that's not the type of threat I'm talking about here, because we're talking about a positional threat, not a tactical threat. So in this position, black has a positional breakthrough. If he gets this move in, he might not just be equal, he might be actually better since our king is kind of exposed. So I want you to think to yourself, what is black's threat here? Does he have a pawn break that could be quite deadly towards us if we let it happen? Alright, I hope you guys pause the clock. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I hope you guys all figured out that the pawn break that black is trying to go for is pawn f5. If we take here, rook takes, and queen moves over, all of a sudden, guess whose king is under attack? Because we have weak light squares, because we don't have a light square bishop, this is going to be a large problem for us. So another way to think positionally is not just what you're going to do, because we already know our plan wants to attack here, but we also know to stop our opponent's threats. Remember, a good way of carrying out your plan is to make your opponent can't carry out his plan. Now, another reason why we can take a move here to defend against this threat is because these two are what I like to call personally long-term weaknesses. These weaknesses are not going anywhere. They're not just going to one day pop out over and go to g6 and be like, wow, my pawn structure is fixed. No, unless we're being silly and just giving up a pawn here and fixing his pawn structure, something like that's just not going to happen anytime soon. So we don't have to worry about that. Instead, what we should worry about is f5, because that's happening right now. So, we know that the threat is f5, and we know we want to attack the king side because the weaknesses that lie here are h7 and h6, and we have more space on the king side. So what are some candidate moves now? Now, what is a candidate move, you ask? A candidate move is going to be a very important terminology I need you guys to know for the next few episodes. Candidate moves is just any move that could possibly be good since it follows your plan or stops your opponent's plan. So for example, King h2 is not a candidate move. It does not follow your plan. There's no reason for you to do it. A move like Rook c1, also not a candidate move. Sure, it develops a piece, but one thing I want you guys to know is just because you develop a piece doesn't mean that you developed it well. A developed piece at the higher levels, or even at the intermediate levels, is a piece that moves somewhere with a purpose. So I want you to ask yourself here, what does white want to play in this position? What are some candidate moves? Jot it down in your notebook again. I'll give yourself another 5 minutes. Alright, I hope you paused your clock. I hope you paused the video and used your time wisely, because I'm going to give you what I would think about in this position. Because my plan is to attack the king side, and I know it's to attack this h7 and h6 pawn specifically, I might be thinking of moves that could bring my pieces over here. Now, obviously not knight over here, because that doesn't make much sense. Perhaps we might want to move our knight over here, knight e1, knight g2, knight h4, knight f5, and that would attack the pawn on h6. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? What else could we do? What other moves are decent? Perhaps we can play knight e4, knight g3, knight h5, or knight f5. Again, these moves are pretty solid. Maybe we can try f4, opening up the king side. If they take us, we can take back with the rook and attack over here. Or maybe the move is e4, letting our bishop to breathe and attack h6. Now those are the candidate moves I want you guys to think about, okay? Hopefully you got at least some of these moves down, okay? And I want you to choose now. I'm going to give you a multiple choice test now. Pause the clock again. Which of these moves would you play in your game? Well, you can't really show e4, but e4 is one of the moves I want you to think about. Which one of these moves are the moves that you would play in your game? In fact, let's add queen e2 as well. And why is that move the best? In this position, only one move gives white a very solid advantage. All other moves give white maybe a slight positional advantage. Now, as you're thinking, one thing that is very important to note is that none of these moves are blunders. None of them are lost. Because I'm expecting you guys to be at the point that you are not blundering pieces anymore, and that you guys can think positionally, soundly, and have to choose between what is a good positional move and what is a not so good positional move. So I hope you guys paused your clocks. Sorry, not pause your clocks. I've been saying that. That's quite funny. But pause your videos and come up with the best move. So when I look at this position over here, my immediate thought is e4. Now why is e4 the best move here? It's because it follows not just one criteria, not just two criteria, but fits three positional criteria that I had set upon before even looking at this position. Before looking at this position, I know I want to look at space. Where I have more space is where I'm going to attack. B, I want to attack where the weaknesses are. C, I want to attack, I want to play a move that not only attacks but also defends against my opponent's threat. And e4 is the only move here that does all three of them. It does A, it brings out it attacks on the side where we have more space by clamping down on important f5 and d5 squares. Now when we play e4, we always have to be worried about a knight or bishop coming here, but in this position we don't have to worry because the knight might have to take a while before coming here. And our piece is already attacking h6, which is a big weakness. Because think about it, if you were your black, what would you do in this position? What would you play for? In this position, black is actually very sad because his only plan was f5, and now he has no plan whatsoever. So therefore, if he plays a random move, let's just say f6, which is a terrible move because it doesn't do anything, we can just play a solid queen c1. Just follow. It looks like a weird move, but it's a solid move. It just says, I'm gonna take on h6. What are you gonna do? The pawn is lost. There's no way to defend it. So, queen c1 is pretty solid. Who knows? Maybe you don't want to play this simple queen c1, but maybe you want to play knight e3, knight f5, and get a knight on an incredible outpost. If you saw this idea too, you get full marks as well. Queen c1, all of these moves are full marks. If you thought knight e2, knight g3, and go on a more complicated version, and go on a positional domination here on dark squares, 150% right there. Because this, going for this maneuver instead of just a measly pawn, shows that you're already thinking way beyond a positional player. Because you're not just thinking material, you're thinking about how to crush your opponent's mentality here. Because if you end up getting this position, not only is the bishop under attack, if it moves, you have knight e7 check, and that's pretty deadly too. All because your opponent's pieces are so badly placed here, solely because of this weakness on h6. So. So let's go back here. Let's go back. So what did we learn today? In this position over here that I just constructed out of in a few minutes, this position, I want you guys to just think, not just in this position, but any position where you're stumped, you haven't seen before, something that is like new. Just stop for a second and think to yourself, where do I have more space? Where are my opponent's weaknesses? What are my opponent's threats? And if you can find a move that fits all three, 90% of the time, it's a good move. There's no way it can be bad. Of course, you gotta make sure you don't blunder your queens and everything. I can't really help you with those type of stuff. But I'm sure if you guys use this model, this very simple model, which we will go way more in depth in the future videos, you guys become 1800 rated students for sure. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If it was productive towards you, please leave a like or comment in the section below. If you have a game you want analyzed, your game or a Grandmaster game or any type of game, please send it in the comments or send it to my Gmail at seanlaychessdevelopment@gmail.com. I hope you guys all have a wonderful evening. Thank you.